In fact, I'm not used to doing this at all in the evenings, and I apologize. I sent out a message here a little bit earlier. Look at that. We get a different camera view than normal as well. But I sent out a message saying that we wanted to, I just wanted to talk with you because, my heavens, folks, since about 5 o'clock or maybe a little bit earlier today, all hell has broken loose here in our nation. I don't know if you've followed this, and I've studied this politics. For 20 plus years, I studied it in college. I've paid close attention. Many of you have as well. Some of you are new, and that's fine. That's fine as well. So this is an education for all of us, but it may be a really big education for some of you if you've not followed politics closely. But so Friday evening time, when often the Obama administration would do their dumps. This is when, and other administrations did this as well. This is when things that you want to release to the media so that you can say we released it in the media, but you give yourself a little bit of buffer because people are not glued to their televisions. People are living their lives. It's a Friday night, right? You've worked all week, and you want to, go to dinner, just unwind, turn off the television, turn off maybe the phone. I don't know. Some of you might have it on all the time. But anyway, this is when information that people kind of have to get out in the media, things that have to be done that are going to be reported on. This is when they're often released. And I mentioned the Obama administration. They did this a lot. The Friday night dump is basically what they would refer to this as. And so we have a ton of stuff here, a ton of stuff that's happened today when no one is paying attention. And these folks are, this is huge stuff. First of all, you probably know by now, I'm going through Twitter here. Twitter's the culprit, one of the culprits. Twitter has banned Sidney Powell. Twitter has banned Michael Flynn. And Twitter has banned, who else has Twitter banned? Twitter's also President Trump. That's the one I wanted to talk with you about. So the sitting president of the United States, let this set in. His Twitter account in the final 12 days of his presidency, right? Biden's scheduled to be inaugurated at noon on January 20th. President Trump's Twitter account has been permanently he's banned. He's not just locked out. They've banned him. And why? Because he's inciting violence, they say. And not only has that happened, that's bad enough. But in addition to that, I want to see if I can do this here. Let me see if I can connect this. But I have an app now. Pedals in the office set me up. In fact, we were just going through this today. We have Gab, which we're going to build our presence on Gab here in the near future, and Parler. We've been doing some stuff on Parler as it is, but both of those apps have been shut down in the Apple Store and in the Google Store. Right? You can't use those apps. In fact, earlier this evening, I was logging into the Parler app, and it wouldn't let me. It was spinning, and then it said something along the lines of something went wrong. It must be your network connection or some such thing. It was probably, 5:30, I'm guessing, around that time. Anyway. So you cannot use the Parler app right now. Think about that. Well, through the Google Play Store or through the Apple Store, you can't use it. They've shut it down. Gab is the same way. Gab was that way before today. Well, it happened earlier anyway. I don't know when. I just know that we were trying to load the app on our phone, and we couldn't do it. It wasn't in Google, and Puddles and I were sitting there saying, why would you not have an app? What the world is going on? This doesn't seem to make much sense. This is how people use social media. Oftentimes they use the app on their phone to post something, picture directly from their phone. You can't do that. And so that is what's going on with social media. You may have also found out or heard that, let me get this pulled up here. In addition to that, Nancy Pelosi is going to introduce articles of impeachment on on Monday. Again, you might be asking yourself, why? I mean, this is, at that point, today's what, the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. 9 days, folks. 9 days left in President Trump's administration. Nancy Pelosi, first of all, was trying to pressure Pence and the administration to enact the 25th Amendment. They've done this before, and they will, I mean, they're going to do it to the very bitter end here. And why, right? Why? You might even be saying, in fact, I think I said on the show today, by the way, we do the regular program, 6 a.m. Monday through Friday, which also airs on Freedom 95 in Indianapolis. So if I reference that, that's what I'm talking about. But why? Why impeach a guy that's got, from right now, 12 days left in office? So that's what they're moving to do. Now, what you may not know is that, of course, you've probably learned this either from civics class or through studies, or maybe from the last impeachment hearing, which the Democrats launched when Trump was supposed to be protecting us from COVID. They were worried about the impeachment hearing, that shenanigan back in January. And so it goes to the House first, the House of Representatives. They vote to impeach. Then if they do that, it moves to the Senate, and they vote to whether or not to acquit or to find the president guilty. And so what you may not know is that those, I don't have the exact name of the documents, and when the Senate gets the case, right? If the House impeaches and they send it to the Senate, when they draw up the papers, the actual hearing and what the case is going to look like, they can write into those papers basically the consequence. And the most obvious consequence is removal from office. That's typically what happens. The president, if he's impeached and if he's found guilty in the Senate, is removed from office. So, but President Trump isn't really in that position. He's going to be gone in 12 days anyway. So why? Well, they can also write in those impeachment papers that goes before the Senate that the president can not serve in, and they can define a public office. They can kind of craft that as they will. So you have an outgoing president that they have maligned, attacked for, I mean, forever, right? Or ever since they realized he was going to run for president and not be a Democrat. The media has attacked him. We have talked about on the show that on day 11, we had people in Congress calling for his impeachment. On his 11th day in office, they were calling for his President Trump's impeachment. Now, whatever you think about President Trump, his tweets, behavior, you have to ask yourself why. What is going on here? Impeachment, 25th Amendment, Twitter permanently bans. Gab is not allowed to be on Google Store or the Apple Store. Parler, the same thing. We also have reports of Nancy Pelosi, which is incredible in its own right. But Nancy Pelosi is trying to get, basically, from reports, the nuclear codes from President Trump, or that's at least the storyline. They're painting this picture that President Trump is a madman. He's backed in the corner. He's a maniacal dictator, and he's going to be kicked out of the White House. And so the story is, and President Obama, right, former President Obama, added kind of fire to this recently, and a few months ago, saying that if President Trump doesn't leave the White House, he's going to, I guess you send in SEAL Team 6, ha ha ha, funny, as though that's the expectation. President Trump's not going to need SEAL Team 6. I can't even believe I'm saying these words, to take him out of the White House. That's not going to happen. He's open. He's never threatened to not leave the White House. This is all part of the narrative. They want you to think that this guy is a dangerous menace to society, and he incited violence. That's the rhetoric. That's the phrase that they say. He's incited violence yesterday in Washington, D.C., which is why these folks allegedly went to the Capitol building and President Trump basically gave them instructions, fired them up, and they, invaded the Capitol building. And we know that there's been one fatality. It appears that there might be another. There's been conflicting reports. There was a report that an officer died from injuries, and then there was reports he's in ICU on life support. Part of the problem is the media can't be, I don't know, they can't get their story straight, and oftentimes they straight out. I'm not saying that there's not an officer in ICU. I'm saying that part of the problem is they don't tell us the truth oftentimes. And so the narrative is President Trump is dangerous. He's inciting violence, right? And of course, if someone says to you, I had someone on Twitter, we were talking about this. She actually posted something very kind. She posted something about Google taking Parler down. And I sarcastically said, another victory for free speech, huh? And of course, she comes back it's a private company. It can do what it will. It's not confined by the First Amendment, and that's true. There are also rules and regulations for social media platforms. That's where this whole Section 230 thing comes into play and so forth. I don't want to go into that right now, but basically, people are kind of applauding this. And in fact, I went on Twitter. In fact, maybe I'll show you this. Let's see. Some of the things I heard on Twitter from simply kind of a little tongue-in-cheek, mocking the folks who are kind of applauding President Trump being removed from Twitter. I'm going to go to the Twitter feed right now. You can see my tweet here. It says, what are all the radical leftist Twitter trolls going to do without real Donald Trump? That doesn't exist anymore. See that right there? Account suspended. It's permanently gone, but it's account suspended. I said, what are they going to do without real Donald Trump tweets to mindlessly, maliciously, hatefully, venomously malign and attack? Move to another platform where free speech reigns. That's funny for me to think about, because these radical leftists, and I mean, look at the comments. Look, a citation needed. What do you mean citation needed? He's been kicked off of Twitter. Twitter bans a hashtag. Twitter bans Trump. I was called Karen. Some of these folks have no sense of humor. I'm just simply asking them, where are they going to go to attack these folks, or to attack someone? If you go to Twitter, and if you're on Twitter, you know that there are, this is the gutter of the universe, folks. Not everybody, but this certainly is. Here's someone that calls Trump comb over Caligula. This lady says she's going to party. I wish some of these radical leftists would lighten up and be able to celebrate, but they only can seem to celebrate. I'm talking about the radicals. I'm not talking about just your rank and file Democrat. Those are folks that are reasonable. Either they believe things that, they're single issue voters a lot of times, or they're lifelong Democrats. Sometimes they're confused. They really are conservatives, but they're voting Democrat, or there's a couple things that make them vote Democrat, but we can agree. I have Democrats that work, believe it or not, at the Todd Huff Show. I've got someone that voted for Biden. I actually helped her vote for Biden. I didn't cry about it. I didn't even try to persuade her. I showed her because she hadn't voted. And I guarantee you, for these folks who act like I'm Karen, I should at least have the guy name. Well, I don't know, maybe not in today's society. But, to say that she would say that I, am very fair to her. But look at this. Of course, I like this girl. She says puppy memes. That's what she's gonna do. I wish. But you look at this, cry more. I'm not crying. But people are celebrating, is my point, the death of free speech. They have effectively silenced President Trump. The president of the United States has effectively been silenced. Here, look at this one here. No sociopaths, fascists, or Nazis are leaving Twitter. Or no, socialists, sociopaths, fascists, and Nazis are leaving Twitter. Good riddance to extremely bad rubbish. Decent humans don't like terrorists. Folks, this just think about the people that you know that voted for President Donald Trump. Does this describe any of them sociopaths, fascists, Nazis? They don't want anyone that doesn't agree with that insanity. Wendy, wear a blanket mask, moron is her, what she put here. Tough Wendy over here. But the mentally ill crowd, it is a venomous environment. That's kind of funny, I guess. But they celebrate this. This is not something, folks, that should be celebrated. The President of the United States being silenced. The President of the United States being silenced. And people celebrate under the auspices, under the guise that he is inciting violence. Let me ask a question. Let's just look at this scenario that supposedly Trump incited this violence. Let's look at this. We've talked to people, or I've heard reports from people who were there. And of course, the vast majority of this event, there were a lot of people. I mean, the people are fired up, but it was peaceable. It was fine. These are good, decent, hardworking, average Americans who love and care for their country, their communities, their states, their families. They worry about their freedom and liberty, their Second Amendment, their First Amendment, their church, their taxes. They worry about these things with Democrats in control. Democrats and radical leftists, right? And now we've got the Senate that's going to be 50-50. And with the inauguration of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and yes, Sarah Palin was right on this. People mocked her back in 2008, but she was right. The Vice President of the United States is the President of the Senate. And so she would be the tie-breaking vote. And so there was no blue wave. There was certainly no blue wave. In fact, they lost House seats. They still had the majority, but they lost. The size of their majority is much smaller, significantly smaller than it was. It's barely just a majority. Nancy Pelosi had to bring someone in with COVID, break her own House rules, bring someone in with COVID to kind of be to help secure her as the Speaker of the House, folks. I mean, it was close to where she didn't have enough votes to be Speaker of the House. And so she broke her rules, just like most Democrats do, by the way, whenever it comes to COVID. Not just Democrats, elected officials. Eric Holcomb, one of those, by the way, governor here. She broke her COVID rules, just like when she got her hair cut back home in San Francisco. Everyone else is locked in place. She's out there running around without a mask, getting her hair cut. I mean, there's so many examples of this. But that's, again, another story unto itself. So we have this scenario where people went to Washington, D.C., Trump supporters, to voice their opinions. They've watched the evidence be presented. They watched these hearings in states. They've watched things be released. They've watched arguments being made by Jenna Ellis or Rudy Giuliani or Sidney Powell or Lynn Wood. I mean, I don't want to get into all the things Lynn Wood's been talking about. But again, some of these folks that provided evidence, and there's clearly evidence. Now, you can argue, again, reasonable people can say there's not enough votes that would have changed this election because Trump needs to flip 3 states. Well, I mean, when you look at the margins and you look at the numbers we're talking about, it's certainly possible. So Trump's been out there, and he's not backing down, right? So he continues to say the election was rigged. And so by saying the election was rigged, apparently that is what is enough to incite violence in the minds of Google and Apple or Twitter now. I think Facebook has Facebook banned Trump yet? I haven't even. It's a lot to keep up with right now. So the argument is that President Trump incites violence by continuing to hammer home the idea that this election was rigged and stolen. Doesn't matter what you've seen. It doesn't matter what the statisticians say. Doesn't matter what the science says, right? This is the pro-party of science, the Democrat Party, we're told. Doesn't matter what the science says. We're supposed to just believe the media. The media called the election for Biden. There's not supposed to be any questions. Even though there's irregularities, even though 5 states shut down, never happened in the history of reporting votes. 5 states shut down they're voting, maybe even more than that, simultaneously about 10 or 10:30 p.m. sometime that night, overnight between then and 4:30 or so in the morning. All those states saw a tremendous amount of votes go to Biden. In fact, highly statistical improbabilities or even impossibilities where Biden gets virtually all of these votes dumped in Michigan and Wisconsin, Georgia, Pennsylvania. All these peculiar things start to happen. We're not supposed to have any questions because they've told us for months that these ballots that are coming in, the absentee ballots are going to be counted last. So, that's why you're going to see this major bump for Biden. It's going to look like Trump's going to win at first. That's what they told us, right? These are the experts. This is what they told us. They didn't tell us that they would stop counting. In fact, North Carolina said early on that they wouldn't have their votes counted until November 12th. That was 9 days. What on earth? This, by the way, for those who think that the governments can lower the sea levels or make things perfectly equal on planet Earth or create utopia, they can't even count, folks. These voting machines count in decimals. Why would a vote ever be a decimal? There's so many questions and red flags and concerns in every step of the process. The government failed us. The courts didn't want to hear this. The state legislatures largely didn't want to hear this. Georgia and Raffensperger and Jeff Duncan, not Jeff Daniels, Jeff Duncan down in the lieutenant governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp. These folks, they tell us how much integrity this election has. Chris Krebs is out there telling us that this was the most secure election in American history, which makes one wonder what was second and third and fourth, which was the least secure election. I mean, comments like this are asinine. But this is what we're told, and folks buy into this and believe this, and you're not allowed to have questions. You're not allowed to demand results. If you do, you're inciting violence. That's where this is culminating. And so President Trump continues to say, hey, we are going to stand firm. We are going to demand election integrity. These tactics, I talked about this on the program today. These tactics are always used against Republicans. The media attacks the Republican, the Democrat Party, and usually the Republicans capitulate because one of the problems Republicans have is that they're wimpy. And so they don't want to be called a name, and they apologize, and they get back in line and operate within that sphere where the Democrats won't attack them and call them names, and the media doesn't go after them too hard, and they can go to the parties in D.C. and that sort of stuff. And so there's this guy that comes along named Donald J. Trump, and he doesn't play by those rules. Whenever they call him a name or say something about him, he ups the ante. He calls them fake news. And they melt down, by the way. They say this is an infringement upon their First Amendment right. This is an attack on the First. To which I say, put your big boy and big girl pants on and actually argue and tell us why you are, in fact, telling us the truth. Let's go have an open debate. Media, let's go have a free and open debate. If you're going to attack the president and he attacks you in return, don't start crying. Don't say it's foul play. Don't cry about it. Don't tell us how terrible of an assault it is for the First Amendment. Just shine the light of truth. By the way, something that these folks know nothing about. These are professional deceivers as far as I'm concerned in the media, a lot of them. Journalism is practically dead. So this is the scenario. And so this has been going on since before President Trump walked into the White House. Before he walked into the White House, in fact, pretty much from the moment he came down the escalator at Trump Tower back in New York City back in June or July of 2015. 2015, bear with me. So there's the media, which of course is effectively the PR firm of the Democrat Party. There's President Trump, who has seen the filth, the deep state, the swamp, and he's exposed it. He has, empowered, returned power, some of that power to the individual, cutting taxes. Having more of your money, folks, is more power for you. It's rightfully yours to begin with. And, cutting bureaucratic red tape. You've seen the stacks of paper that President Trump's team have eliminated all these rules and bureaucracies, which, by the way, Biden has told us he's going to be re-implementing those things. And they just don't like the direction that President Trump took this. And they've never fought a force like him. They cannot silence him. He goes to Twitter. He goes to the bully pulpit, and they cover him. They don't want to cover the guy. They cover him. They have to, because he demands that media attention. And so he has a way of connecting with his voters. Now, people certainly hate him, but he also has a bond and a connection with his base that's really unlike any other. And as the great Rush Limbaugh says, that if the media doesn't help you build that connection and that bond and build you up as a media personality or a politician, they can't take you down. And that's what we've seen. President Trump has these rallies and has tens of thousands of people. Biden has a rally and he fills 50 circles with people who, I mean, it sounds like you're at the local library. So this is what they were up against. They didn't like this, they being the media, the deep state, the Democrat Party. Heck, a lot of Republicans, by the way, as well. They don't like this. They don't like their system being upended. This is a career path for folks. This is what they want to be when they grow up. This is their retirement. This is their advancement and career. This is a future ambassadorship somewhere. This is their, like I said, 401k, retirement, whatever they've got, pension, I guess, there. And so this is what we're up against. And so President Trump had been talking about this leading up to the election, talked about the possibility of a rigged election. Of course, that creates tension, and people say, why would you say that? And you're undermining the integrity of our elections. But when we've seen what's happened, when we've seen the evidence, for those who have looked at this, I mean, it is a problem. Anyone who's seen what's happened in these states and cannot say it's a problem is candidly part of the problem. You can say that it wasn't enough of a difference to make Biden, for Trump to beat Biden. I'll listen to that. But to watch what happened, to watch poll watchers get kicked out, or to see people who are cheering when poll watchers get kicked out, when you see numbers change, people getting negative, getting negative vote counts whenever things are updated. You see all this when votes are created, when 2/3 of votes, 3/4 of votes are adjudicated for problems and corrections, and they go into this process whereby there's no way to actually track what happened to that ballot and that vote. And then the parts of the machines that keep records of all the things that were happening on that machine, they're vanished. They disappeared. We cannot inspect those machines. And there's so many problems. You don't have to say it's enough to overturn the election. I'll entertain that. But to have no curiosity, no interest, no concern about this is a problem altogether different to what was happening yesterday. We've gone through this whole process for the past 2 months where evidence has been presented to some degree publicly, to some degree to these congressional leaders in states. You have states, you have representatives and senators in states who have requested that they can, that Pence return the opportunity to them to change their electors. Now, you can say it wasn't enough of them or whatever. I'll listen to all that, but to act like this is the most secure election of all time, to act like people that are Trump supporters have no reason to be upset or concerned or to have questions is just completely ridiculous. And so Trump talks about this. People go there at the Capitol in D.C., first of all, at the Ellipse, peaceful protest most of the day. And then you know what happens that later that day, whenever they're convening, they've separated the House and the Senate into their respective chambers to debate the Arizona delegates. And then, of course, all this breaks out. We've seen the videos and so forth, which is reprehensible, terrible, bad. But to say Trump incited this because he said that there were problems in the election, that's effectively what we're saying here. That's why Trump's being silenced on these social media platforms, because he's inciting violence. That's why Nancy Pelosi is pushing, allegedly why she's pushing. That's not reality. But that is why she's pushing for the first, the 25th Amendment to be invoked, and now for impeachment. They don't want President Trump to have any other opportunities to run and to be in politics again. They want to be over this guy. They are terrified of him, and more importantly, you, those of you that are conservative, limited government types, folks that are Make America Great Again supporters, this is what they're afraid of. I mean, they're silencing the president of the United States on social media under the guise that he incited violence. If he's simply saying what has been reported or what evidence we've seen for voter fraud or for corruption in these places, why is it the telling of what happened that makes people get in trouble for inciting violence, and why isn't the actual action itself? I mean, if me saying that, poll workers were kicked out, if that incites violence, then surely the person who kicked the poll worker out committed the act that I spoke of. That's the real cause of the violence, if that's the logical way of that these folks think about this. But we've reached these perilous and difficult times. This is not healthy for a constitutional republic. It's been said, and when I was in school, Butler University, American University in Washington, D.C., we used to talk about these things in class, political science, philosophy, and if you believed in freedom of speech, you had to be able to defend someone's ability to say something with which you vehemently disagree. And we've lost that, or we're losing that. It's not present at Twitter. It's not present at Facebook. They advance a certain ideology, and they've gotten to the point to where if you disagree with the ideology of the platform, you are penalized. And we've seen this. I've experienced it a little bit, not to the degree that some of the bigger players have, but I've experienced it a little bit. We were not completely locked down. They told us that it was an error, an error with the algorithm, and maybe it was. I don't know. But all these instances of conservatives and Republican groups being silenced on social media is not just glitches. It's not just an error. So lots of things happening. These things happening simultaneously. Think about this. Simultaneously on a Friday evening piques my interest. Now, I want to play one more thing, and I want to, I've gone back and forth as to whether or not I was going to share this. I'm not suggesting that this is a true depiction of reality. I'm not. I like this guy. Some of you will not like who I'm about to reference, but many of you will. It's the MyPillow guy, Mike Lindell. He went to, I've seen it on Twitter. I don't know where he originally posted this. So keep in mind, this happened about 3 o'clock this afternoon, before all this other stuff hit the fan. My point is, with everything happening like this, something's going on. I don't know what it is, but I have never in my 20-plus years of following politics ever seen a series of such egregious actions. Anti-free speech, calls for impeachment, nuclear codes being requested by the Speaker of the House, 25th Amendment, President of the United States silenced pretty much from being able to get his message out. You think about that. And I find myself asking the question, why? Why? Why suddenly, again, what happened at the Capitol, I fully and completely, it cannot happen. I understand anger. I understand disappointment. I understand that, but it doesn't give anyone the right to do what happened a couple of days ago. But why did that not matter during all these other protests? Why did it not matter when Washington, D.C. was in flames? Why? Why were we not allowed to say that? Why did the media continually correct us and say that they were peaceful protesters? Why? Why suddenly is it just this? And this was terrible. That specific part of yesterday was terrible. Life, at least one, maybe two, were directly lost because of what happened on the Capitol grounds. Terrible thing. I'm a conservative Christian, and fortunately, I have a relationship with Jesus, and so, but my heart breaks whenever anyone dies. Even when we talked about these, the allegations of, where over the summer, over the past couple of years, where people alleged police brutality. Say Michael Brown, for example. Michael Brown, the hands up, don't shoot thing was not what happened. That's clearly not what happened. Even the Eric Holder Attorney General's office said that that's not what happened. it's still tragic that Michael Brown was killed. He attacked Officer Darren Wilson in his car and was shot at close range. That's awful. The loss of life, I've always said that, is a terrible, terrible thing. But that doesn't, we have to also look at the other picture. And if we have an instance where violence happens, it does not, and the same goes for Black Lives Matter. Now, the leaders of Black Lives Matter are self-proclaimed Marxists, so that's not a good thing. That's an evil thing. But there are people that are protesting peaceably to draw attention to things that they believe police are targeting or using excessive violence or deadly force against black suspects in this country. And they are well-meaning people, and I'm sure there are instances where that's happened. And it's terrible when it does happen every single time, no matter the race, gender, color, any of that. Again, as a child of God, we're all the same. But my point here is to say that there's a sudden interest in, first of all, law enforcement by the left. They want to defund these guys and take away their weapons and supplies and all that sort of stuff. See Minneapolis, see Portland, Oregon, see Seattle, Washington, or Chaz if you prefer. So these folks suddenly, what happened at the Capitol Hill yesterday is worthy of shutting every single person who's challenged the election results down. That's effectively what they've done. And those two things are not compatible. People are responsible for their own actions. Now, if someone's directly calling for violence, that's a different thing, but that's clearly not what happened. Folks, this is the United States of America. What Twitter is doing, what Apple and Google are doing, even though they're not government entities, this is Stalinistic tactics. They want to silence those with different political ideologies. And that is unacceptable. That should be unacceptable to every single American in this nation. No matter what the person is saying, it should be unacceptable that we're using these tactics to silence, especially the most sacred kind of speech, which is free speech. So I just wanted to go through that. Sorry, I forgot. I wanted to play this soundbite or this little video from Mike Lindell. Now, again, I'm not saying it's true. I'm just simply saying he records this at 3 o'clock today. Maybe he's completely crazy. I personally like the guy. Maybe something else is going on here. I don't know. But just listen to this.
Team, what is stuff going on that I can't say. All I want to do is give everybody confidence that Donald Trump's going to be your president for the next 4 years. All this, they're very much afraid all the evidence that I know is there is going to come out this week. And everybody praying for protection for everybody that's standing up to these guys for our country. This is the only time we have in history to beat these guys, to suppress the evil and beat the evil. This is it's a blessing that we're in. We're on election night that Donald Trump got so many votes that actually broke the algorithms of the machines. This is all going to be revealed. If that hadn't happened, if all of you hadn't voted of our country, if we hadn't all voted because of this great president, those algorithms would not have broke, and we wouldn't be sitting here talking right now. We would all went to bed. They would have been over in the morning, and but because he got 6 million more votes than what they expected, which is close to 80 million, and this will all come out. Biden only got 68 million, if that. I mean, they're going to see all these things. I'm heading out now from Minnesota, and I'm going to keep you all updated. We're actually going to do a filming. I'm going to get something filmed when we're presenting all the evidence so that you all can see this. I want America to see what I've seen, all the evidence. Because this isn't something where we can ever get complacent on. This is a fight for everything we've grown up with, everything we live for, everything this country stands for. The whole world is watching.
Okay, again, I'm just telling you that that is a bold thing to say. And again, according to what I see on Twitter here, for where this was tweeted, and Mike Lindell tweeted this out himself or retweeted it. The tweet says this was approximately 3 p.m. Eastern on 1/8/21. So that is that was about 7 hours ago, 7.5 hours ago. So again, delusional, incorrect. I'm just saying, to make these bold of comments, given where we are, the electors have voted, right? I mean, again, I'm not saying that I am not saying that this is the truth. I'm simply saying what the world is going on here today, right? We've got talk of nuclear codes being taken from the president. We've got Mike Lindell doing this video. We've got Twitter shutting him down. We've got Twitter shutting Michael Flynn, Sidney Powell down. We have Gab and Parler being taken off of Google and Apple. And we also have, what else do we have? Oh, impeachment and the 25th Amendment. And folks, all this happens on a Friday evening. That is just not normal. Something is really going on here. I don't know what. But I do know that patriots and people who are concerned for this country need to unite and get together. And I call to my Democrat friends as well. My dad is a union Democrat. And we are, we don't agree on everything, of course, but I mean, there's a lot of things we do agree on, politically speaking. And I think that there's a lot of people, if you take the names of the candidates out of this and the conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, and you talk about the issues, there is a lot of agreement. A lot of people are concerned for this country, have a love for this country in both parties. But there is a radical leftist wing, folks, of the Democrat Party. They're socialists. Some of them are even communists, and they are hell-bent on transforming this nation. And they have a whole lot more power than I ever care to admit. We need to unite to stop that. We need to return to constitutional limited government. And folks who can agree on those things, the importance of liberty, freedom, the Constitution, the First Amendment, freedom of religion, speech, assembly, the press, Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, to protect myself from all threats, whether it be someone who's trying to harm my family in my home or in the public square or with the government, what have you, to be able to protect myself. That's a God-given right. We need to return to that. Return to this idea that we are all given these rights, not by our state or our local government or by our federal government, but these things come from Almighty God. These are part of what it means to be a human being, and all people have these rights. We need to return to that. And so we're trying to build a community. I mean, I'm deadly serious about this. And if you want to, you can follow us on these social channels. You can always email me, todd@toddfshow.com, questions, thoughts, opinions, feedback. I do my best to get back with folks quickly. Right now I've been inundated. You can imagine with everything going on. But I invite you, and look, we have things where people can, become students at our conservative, not bitter university. I don't care if you never buy a thing from us. I do hope some of you do, but you don't have to. We just need like-minded people. I don't care if you're another conservative talk show host, another podcaster. You can be a writer. You can be someone who's a Tea Party activist. You can be a regular Joe who just says, I want to do something to help this country. Well, here's your opportunity. I'll tell you the best way to do that, to kind of connect with us, is to join our email newsletter. It is free. It is free. All you have to do is go to toddfshow.com/subscribe, or you can text the word Huff, and we're probably going to do away with the texting option soon, but text Huff to 31996, and you'll be on the email newsletter. It is free. There might be offers for you to buy apparel. You don't have to, I mean this, you don't have to do any of that. There's no obligation. I just want like-minded people to come on board and to fight this stuff back, to know how to become more of effective conservative communicators, to be able to proclaim and talk about the truth, to be able to find candidates. And folks, that's a big problem. We need a lot of primary challenges to people of all levels of our government, from state senators in the state of Indiana, governors, secretaries of, state, whatever, local offices, congressmen. We need to have more conservative people. And if you don't like the word conservative, people who are interested in limited government, the rule of law, the role of the individual, the citizen, not the state. We need to get away from statism and these utopian promises, and we need to empower the individual again. That's where this country was made great, was through the individual. Now, collectively, we can pull together in our community and work together. I don't mean folks misunderstand that a lot of times. I'm a member of a church, and we work with people all the time through our business and that sort of thing, through our own voluntary cooperation. And I believe in charities. In fact, we partner with Shepherd Community Center on the Near East Side of Indianapolis, and they provide for the needs of those in that community. I'm simply saying those partnerships privately that you choose to engage in are much more effective and better than being forced by government. It's less efficient. It never does what it tells us it's going to do. It always costs more. They always want more money. And it always requires that we give up some of our freedoms. And that's enough of this. It has to stop. It has to stop. And so if you want to be a part of that movement, even if you're a Democrat, I think you'd be surprised. Unless you're going to drop the proverbial mocktail, we'll be able to get along. We will be able to get along as long as it is, as much as it is up to me. If you want to be one of these troublemakers, I just won't even waste my time with that. But if you have genuine questions, we can engage. And I'm happy to do that. So, toddfshow.com/subscribe is how you can subscribe to the newsletter. And again, it's free. It's just right now I want to use that as a tool to pull like-minded people together, because we have real problems in this country, and we've got to get these things fixed, and we've got to pull together, unite around the principles. You just can't say unite. You have to unite around principles that matter. And the principles that matter are those things that are outlined in our Constitution, those bedrock principles of liberty, free speech, freedom of religion, and those things. Also, I'll add this as well. This nation is in need of a spiritual awakening and a revival. And so I encourage you, those of you that are Christians, to unite in prayer and to pray for this country, to pray for truth and to pray for justice and to pray for light. And whatever the consequence, whatever that means in our elections, be prepared. We have to accept that if that is the world in which we are operating within. If we're operating in worlds of corruption, darkness, deceit, then we better question and hold these folks accountable and demand answers. And that's what this whole thing was about in these questions about election integrity. So, all right, folks, I got to wrap up. Thanks so much for listening. I welcome your emails, thoughts, opinions, adoration, and praise as well. Todd@toddfshow.com. Like our page, connect with us. And again, if you want to connect with us and really be a part of a movement, I encourage you to sign up for our email newsletter. No tricks. I just want people in the movement so that when we pull some things together, we can have your information and we can begin to make a difference here locally, at least in the state of Indiana. toddfshow.com/subscribe, or text the word HUFF, HUFF, right back there over my shoulder. Other way. No, that was right the first time. HUFF to 31996. Guys, I got to go. God bless. I always end every broadcast with SDG, those three letters. If you want to know more about that, you can search SDG on my website, and I've got an explanation of that. But guys, thank you so much. SDG, God bless you. Have a good weekend. God bless this great nation. See you Monday.